I thought it was just a routine checkup on the alien research station. The nurse smiled, her voice soothing, telling me to relax. But then, her hands moved in ways no medical procedure should allow. My heart raced, my mind screamed, and yet I couldn't look away. What started as science turned into something far more personal, something that could change everything I thought I knew about humans and aliens forever. The docking bay hummed with a low, persistent vibration as the last of the transport ships shuddered into place. Humanity's reach in the Orion sector had expanded faster than anyone had predicted, and MedStation Delta was the crown jewel of interstellar healthcare research. It was a facility meant to bridge human and alien medicine, a place where the improbable collaboration between species wasn't just encouraged, it was mandatory. Lieutenant Adrian Cade stepped off the transport, adjusting the collar of his regulation uniform. His boots clicked against the polished metal floor, the echo reverberating faintly in the cavernous hangar. The station smelled faintly of ozone and antiseptic, a combination that made his throat tighten with anticipation. He wasn't here for sightseeing, he was here for duty. Humanity had promised to supply medical personnel for MedStation Delta, and Adrian had been chosen for the initial rotation. He'd read the reports. Alien physiology was nothing like human anatomy. The station was designed with modular rooms, each tailored to a species' environmental and physiological needs. The floors were soft but firm, adjusting automatically to the weight distribution of different species. Walls were imbued with a subtle biofeedback system, capable of detecting stress, pain, or agitation in both patients and staff. To Adrian, it felt like stepping into the future, but one where humans were still painfully out of place. A soft chime announced his arrival at the intake area. Before he could even look up, a presence glided into his peripheral vision. She was unlike anything he had expected. The nurse who approached him was alien, humanoid but undeniably foreign. Her skin shimmered with a pearlescent sheen, catching the light in subtle, shifting patterns. Her eyes were larger than human norms, iridescent, like liquid opal, reflecting a spectrum of colors that seemed to change with every subtle movement. Long, delicate fingers ended in tapered tips that seemed almost too fragile for practical use, but they moved with deliberate precision. "Lieutenant Adrian Cade," she said, her voice melodic but with an undertone that suggested amusement. "I am Svara. Welcome to MedStation Delta. Please follow me." Adrian swallowed, nodding, trying to suppress the nervousness he felt. There was an alien elegance to her presence, a way she moved that radiated authority without overt force. He found himself aware of every sound he made, every slight adjustment of his posture. It was a simple walk down the intake corridor, yet every step felt charged with tension. The room she led him to was stark but not sterile. Soft, indirect lighting eliminated shadows, creating an atmosphere that was both calming and subtly disorienting. The walls themselves seemed to pulse faintly, as if breathing in time with the occupants. Adrian took a step inside, and the door sealed automatically behind them. Svara gestured toward a soft, curved examination table. "You will be receiving a standard physiological assessment. Please remove your outerwear and lie on the table. Relax. There is no danger here." Adrian hesitated. He had been trained for 1,000 protocols, but this was different. "Of course," he said, voice steady though his pulse quickened. Slowly, he removed his jacket, letting it hang on the edge of a nearby console. His uniform shirt followed, and he placed his hands at his sides on the table, eyes carefully avoiding Svara's gaze, though he was acutely aware of her presence just above him. Svara's approach was silent, almost liquid. She moved with an unearthly grace, her hands hovering briefly above his chest before moving in a slow, methodical pattern down toward his abdomen. "Relax," she said again, a note of insistence in her voice that carried both authority and a subtle, intimate undertone. Her hands were cool, smooth, and impossibly precise. The sensors embedded in her fingertips glimmered faintly as they traced the contours of his torso. Adrian felt a shiver travel down his spine, not from fear, but from the contact. It was clinical, yet her touch lingered in a way that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. "Human musculature is fascinating," she murmured, almost conversationally. Her hands moved along his sides, mapping subtle variations in tension, noticing how his abdominal muscles flexed involuntarily. Adrian swallowed hard, feeling an unexpected heat pooling low in his belly. He reminded himself, this was a medical assessment, not anything else. Still, the human mind was notoriously easy to trick, and Svara seemed acutely aware of that fact. "Your response to touch is heightened," she noted, tilting her head slightly. The iridescent sheen of her skin shifted, rippling faintly with a color pattern that Adrian recognized instinctively as an expression of her own physiological curiosity. Fascinating. Adrian's breathing quickened, the sound of it louder in his own ears than anywhere else. He tried to focus on the sterile, alien instrumentation lining the room, the scanner hovering faintly above the table, the sensors embedded in the walls, but his attention kept returning to the feeling of her hands on him. It was clinical, precise, yet impossibly intimate. Svara's hands drifted lower, brushing across the sides of his abdomen with deliberate slowness. Adrian's mind protested with rational reminders. This is medical. This is procedure. Yet the sensations she elicited were undeniable. His body reacted despite his attempts at control, every subtle brush sending pulses of warmth and tension through him. Human physiology, she continued softly, is remarkable not just for its resilience, but for its capacity to react to stimuli. Her tone was flat, almost scholarly, yet the inflection at the end carried a trace of teasing. Adrian's eyes widened slightly, and he caught himself shifting involuntarily on the table. "You're noticing how my body responds?" he asked, voice hoarse, betraying more tension than he intended. "Yes," Svara said simply. Her hands paused for a moment, fingertips hovering just above his navel. "Every subtle movement, every involuntary reaction, all of it is data. But data alone does not capture the full story. Experience matters." Adrian's pulse raced. He wanted to maintain professional composure, but the alien presence, the intimacy of her touch, and the sheer novelty of her physiology combined to overwhelm his carefully trained restraint. He felt both exposed and studied, a human specimen under the scrutiny of a species whose mastery of touch and sensory perception far outstripped his own. The tension built as Svara's hands moved slightly lower, brushing along the contours of his hips. Adrian's mind flared with instinctive awareness of the vulnerability inherent in his position. Every rational thought about procedure, protocol, and duty collided with raw, undeniable sensation. He tried to force his breathing into a controlled rhythm, but even that felt like a losing battle against the tide of awareness her presence invoked. "Relax," she repeated once more, this time with a softer, almost intimate cadence. The word wrapped around him like a current, simultaneously commanding and inviting. Her eyes locked with his, iridescent hues shifting in a way that made it difficult to look away. In that gaze, Adrian sensed not just observation, but anticipation, curiosity tuned to the minutest human response. He swallowed hard, a flush creeping up his neck. I'm trying," he managed, voice betraying the tension he fought to conceal. "Good," Svara said, moving her hands with gentle insistence, exploring, mapping, noting each microreaction. Her touch was clinical, yes, but she was aware of its effect on him, and deliberately so. Every brush of her fingers was a lesson in human physiology, both mechanical and emotional. Adrian could feel the duality, the nurse as healer and the alien as observer of sensation. Minutes stretched into an eternity, each second charged with unspoken awareness. Adrian's body responded instinctively, muscles tightening and relaxing under her touch. The air between them seemed to vibrate with tension, professional, physiological, and undeniably intimate. Finally, Svara stepped back slightly, letting her hands hover just above his abdomen before drawing them away completely. The sensors in her fingertips dimmed, leaving Adrian with a mix of relief and lingering heat. "You are remarkable," she said softly, almost to herself. Then she regarded him more directly, her gaze assessing, analytical, yet with a trace of something else. Curiosity, yes, but also something dangerously close to fascination. Adrian exhaled slowly, trying to regain control over his racing heart. "Thank you," he said, forcing a calm he did not feel. I didn't expect." "You expected?" Svara tilted her head, the motion fluid, alien mesmerizing. "Humans are unpredictable. That is precisely why your species fascinates us. Your bodies react, your minds respond, and your instincts, they are both fragile and resilient in ways we cannot fully anticipate." Adrian nodded, feeling a flush of both pride and embarrassment. He had entered the station thinking he would observe alien medicine. Instead, he had become the subject of an examination that tested not just his physiology, but his composure, his restraint, and his very awareness of his human limits. As Svara prepared the next set of scanners, Adrian realized something crucial. In this station, in this interaction, humans were more than just participants. They were anomalies to be studied, forces to be understood. And in that realization, a spark ignited within him, the awareness that humanity, fragile though it might seem, had power. Not just in muscle or bone, but in reaction, in unpredictability, in the stubborn, unquantifiable nature of being human. He would have to learn quickly, not just to survive Medstation Delta, but to navigate the delicate, charged dance of alien curiosity, human vulnerability, and the unspoken tension that seemed to hang in every glance, every touch, every word spoken by the enigmatic Svara. For now, though, he lay there, heart still racing, body still humming with residual awareness of her touch. He understood one thing clearly: he was no longer simply a human in space. He was an experiment, an anomaly, a subject of fascination, and the journey into understanding himself, and the aliens who studied him, had only just begun. Adrian remained on the examination table long after Svara had stepped away to adjust the scanning instruments. The sterile yet oddly soothing hum of Medstation Delta filled his ears, a sound that had grown almost comforting despite the lingering adrenaline in his veins. He tried to focus on his breathing, slow and steady, but the memory of Svara's hands, their light, precise contact, lingered in every nerve ending, a persistent, insistent heat that refused to dissipate. Before he could collect himself, Svara returned. This time, she carried no visible instruments, no holographic pads or scanning devices, only her presence, fluid and silent, moving with that hypnotic grace that made Adrian acutely aware of every inch of his body. "You have learned quickly," she said, her voice softer, almost a whisper. "Your body responds exactly as I anticipated. But your mind," she tilted her head, a motion that seemed to shimmer her iridescent skin in subtle waves, "is more curious than your training allows. That is admirable." Adrian swallowed hard, feeling both pride and embarrassment. The warmth in his belly deepened as he realized that Svara had noticed more than just his physical reactions. She had read his tension, his mental resistance, the precise moments when he tried to regain control over his body and thoughts. I am just doing my duty," he said, though his voice faltered, betraying his inner turmoil. "Duty is commendable," she replied, stepping closer. The faint luminescence of her skin reflected in the ambient lights of the room, highlighting the delicate structure of her features. "But curiosity, instinct, that is what truly sets humans apart." Her hands hovered near his sides again, the mere presence of them enough to make Adrian tense. He knew she wasn't touching yet, but the anticipation, the knowledge that she could, was almost unbearable. He tried to focus on the cold, metallic surface of the table, the hum of the ventilation system, the faint blinking of sensors, but nothing could distract him from the awareness of her proximity. "You are aware," Svara said, her tone shifting slightly, a subtle vibration threading through her words, "that your reactions are revealing?" Adrian hesitated. I am aware." "Good," she murmured, finally letting her fingers brush along the side of his torso. The touch was deliberate, calculated, sliding over his muscles with a precision that was clinical and intimate simultaneously. Adrian's breath hitched slightly, the response involuntary. She sensed it immediately, pausing for the briefest fraction of a second, just enough for him to feel the weight of her observation. "It is remarkable," she said softly, almost to herself, "how a human's body can betray its own attempts at control." Adrian felt heat creeping up his neck, spreading across his chest and settling low in his belly. He clenched his fists lightly, trying to anchor himself to something tangible, something grounding. Yet the sensation of her touch, combined with the soft, analytical cadence of her voice, made the struggle almost pointless. Svara's hands moved with slow, deliberate precision, exploring the subtle ridges and contours of his abdomen and sides. Each movement seemed designed not merely to measure, but to elicit. Adrian's body responded instinctively, his muscles tightening then relaxing under her fingertips. He could feel the contrast between human instinct and alien control, a dynamic that both unnerved and fascinated him. "You are tense," she noted, her voice melodic, iridescent eyes locking on his. "And yet your physiology adapts. Every involuntary response, every microreaction, is a testament to your species' resilience." Adrian exhaled sharply, trying to regain composure. I'm trying to relax," he admitted, voice thick with awareness of his own vulnerability. "Relaxation," Svara mused, "is not merely the absence of tension. It is the acknowledgement of it, the understanding of it, and the conscious decision to allow the body to respond naturally." Her hands drifted lower along his abdomen, and Adrian felt an almost electric awareness of every nerve ending firing. "And yet control is necessary. You humans are paradoxes. fragile and resilient, compliant and defiant, all at once. The soft brush of her fingertips sent a shiver down his spine. Adrian's training screamed at him to remain professional, to treat this as medical assessment, nothing more. But the intensity of her touch, the alien intelligence behind every motion, made restraint nearly impossible. Every subtle movement, every involuntary breath or tensing of his muscles was data, and she was reading it all. "Tell me," she whispered, her hands tracing a slow, almost deliberate path toward his hips, "how much of this is instinct, and how much is conscious control?" Adrian swallowed, mind racing. The question was simple, yet the weight behind it was immense. I'm not sure," he admitted, his voice betraying more than he intended. Her hand paused, hovering just above his hip bone, letting the tension hang between them. The touch was gentle but insistent, a reminder of the alien mastery she wielded effortlessly. "That is precisely the point," she murmured. "Humans are unpredictable. Your instinct is uniquely responsive, and your restraint commendable, yet flawed." Fascinating. Adrian's pulse pounded in his ears, every nerve ending alive with awareness of her proximity. His body reacted before his mind could fully process the sensation, a flinch, a subtle shiver, a tightening of muscles that he could not hide. Svar's iridescent eyes narrowed slightly, as if she were logging every response, analyzing every micro-movement. "You are remarkable," she said softly, almost reverently. "Not merely for your strength, but for your capacity to feel, to respond, to exist in a body that is at once fragile and resilient. Your species," she paused, letting the words hang in the air, "is extraordinary." The intimacy of her observation, combined with the precise, deliberate brush of her hands, created a tension that was almost unbearable. Adrian felt the heat pooling low in his abdomen, a mixture of nervousness, arousal, and fascination. He tried to focus on his training, on duty, on professional boundaries, but it was like trying to resist a tide. Her presence was overwhelming, yet impossible to look away from. Svar's hands moved again, brushing lightly along the sides of his torso and over the subtle contours of his abdomen. Adrian's mind raced. He had faced hostile aliens, zero-gravity combat, and countless dangerous missions. But this was a battlefield of nerves, of instinct, of human vulnerability against alien perception. "You are aware," she said softly, voice like a caress, "that your reactions tell me more than words ever could. Each micro-movement, every subtle tightening, every shift of breath," her hand hovered just above his lower abdomen, "reveals your limits, your thresholds, your resilience." Adrian exhaled sharply, muscles tensing and relaxing involuntarily. He wanted to speak, to assert control, to re-establish boundaries, but every word caught in his throat. Svar's touch, her presence, her voice, created a paradox he could not navigate easily: the need to maintain composure, and the inevitability of his own body's response. She leaned closer, her gaze meeting his directly. "Do you understand, Lieutenant, what it means to be human in this environment?" He nodded, barely. "I think so." "Good," she whispered. "Because it is only by understanding your body, your instincts, your responses, that you can truly navigate interactions with other species. And only by acknowledging the tension, the intimacy, and the instinctual reactions can you harness them." Her hands drifted once more, brushing lightly along his sides and lower abdomen, testing thresholds, measuring reactions. Adrian's pulse thundered in his ears, every nerve ending alive, every muscle aware of the delicate interplay of control and surrender. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Each subtle brush, each nuanced observation, built a tension that was at once professional, physiological, and undeniably intimate. Adrian's awareness expanded beyond the room, beyond the table, beyond even himself. He understood, in a visceral way, the uniqueness of humanity, fragile, resilient, unpredictable, and the alien perception that made him both studied and exalted. Finally, Svara stepped back slightly, letting her hands hover above his torso before drawing away completely. Adrian lay there, chest rising and falling rapidly, awareness of his own body heightened to an almost painful degree. "You are extraordinary," she said softly, her gaze meeting his. "Not merely for your physical response, but for the capacity to withstand, to learn, to adapt. And for that, you are worthy of further study." Adrian exhaled slowly, feeling both relief and lingering heat. He knew, instinctively, that this was only the beginning. Medstation Delta was not a simple hospital. It was a place where humans were anomalies, subjects, and participants in a complex dance of physiology, perception, and alien curiosity. And Svara was not merely a nurse, she was a guide, a predator of sensation, and an observer of human limits. As the scanners powered down and ambient light shifted slightly in the room, Adrian understood one thing clearly. His journey into the depths of alien-human interaction, tension, and understanding had only just begun. And the next encounter would test him in ways that he could not yet predict, but that he would face, because that was what it meant to be human in a universe that watched, measured, and learned from every subtle reaction. Adrian lay on the examination table, still acutely aware of every lingering sensation from Svara's presence. Though the med station lights glowed softly around him, he felt like he existed in a space separate from time, as if the room itself had contracted to the distance between him and the alien nurse. His body had not forgotten the precise pressure of her fingers, the near-telepathic timing of her touch, the subtle shifts that made every nerve fire in unexpected ways. Svara had paused her assessment at the perfect moment, leaving Adrian suspended between relief and anticipation. He could sense that she was measuring more than just human physiology. She was mapping reactions, calibrating thresholds, and probing the delicate balance between conscious restraint and instinctive surrender. "You are remarkably human," she murmured, voice like a low hum that reverberated through the small chamber. "Not only in your physical responses, but in your ability to adapt to stimuli you cannot fully comprehend. That is why I am intrigued. That is why your kind matters." Adrian swallowed, still trying to stabilize his breathing. I want to understand," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I want to cooperate fully." Her eyes glimmered faintly, a prismatic shimmer that shifted with the ambient light. "Understanding," she replied, "is not merely an intellectual pursuit. It is a matter of experience. You must allow your body to speak as much as your mind, Lieutenant. Only then can you truly grasp the human potential I study." Adrian's pulse quickened. The way she said, "allow your body to speak," carried a dual meaning, clinical on the surface, intimate in undertone. Every instinct in him knew that surrendering entirely, even within the boundaries of the medical assessment, meant revealing more than he was prepared to. Yet every fiber of his being responded to her, eager to obey, to endure, to experience whatever Svara intended. "Very well," he said, forcing steadiness into his tone. I will cooperate fully." Svara nodded, and her fingers drifted toward him once more. This time, there was no hesitation. She let them brush across his abdomen in deliberate, calculated strokes, each movement designed to test his reactions, to probe the subtle tremors and micro-adjustments of muscle and skin. Adrian flinched slightly at first, a reflexive tightening, but then he consciously relaxed, forcing his body to respond without restraint. "You are resisting less," she observed, a soft edge of approval in her melodic tone. "Good. You are learning faster than anticipated." Adrian's body betrayed him despite his conscious efforts. Each subtle pressure, each feather-like glide of her hand, sent sparks through him, shivers that ran down his spine and settled low, almost painfully, in his pelvis. He clenched the table with one hand, using it as an anchor to prevent his reactions from becoming overt. But Svara was relentless. Her alien perception picked up the smallest micro-flinch, the faintest increase in heartbeat, the subtlest shift in muscle tension. "You feel everything," she said softly, leaning closer so her breath brushed across the side of his face. Her lips did not touch him, yet the warmth of her presence was like a physical weight pressing against his nerves. The air, the subtle vibrations, the tension in your muscles, even the anticipation of touch affects your responses. Adrian swallowed hard. The intimacy of her observation, paired with the precision of her touch, created a tension that was almost unbearable. I feel it," he admitted. "All of it." "Exactly," she whispered. "And it is that awareness, that responsiveness, that makes your species exceptional. Most humans would panic under such stimuli. Most would struggle to maintain composure. You adapt." Her hands drifted lower, brushing along the line of his hip bone, a deliberate motion that sent a ripple of heat through him. Adrian's body reacted instinctively, his muscles tensed and released in ways he could not fully control. He wanted to speak, to redirect the conversation, to reassert authority over his body, but Svara's gaze, those iridescent eyes analyzing every fiber of him, held him in place. "You are remarkable," she said softly, almost reverently. "Not merely for endurance, but for the subtleties of response. Micro-adjustments, controlled tension, instinctive adaptation, all of these demonstrate the human potential that other species often overlook." Adrian's breath hitched as her hand lingered, tracing a deliberate path along his abdomen. The sensation was at once clinical and intimate, a contradiction that left him simultaneously aware of every detail and helpless to resist the rising tension. I want to learn more," he managed to say, his voice strained with effort. "About your species, about myself." Svara's gaze softened, a rare flicker of emotion threading through the alien precision. "Learning," she said, "requires trust. You must trust not only me, but yourself. Trust that your instincts are valuable, that your responses are valid, and that your limits are not weaknesses, but opportunities." Adrian's mind reeled. Trust was a dangerous concept here. The stakes were higher than anything he had faced in combat. Yet there was an undeniable pull, a magnetic draw toward understanding, toward experience, toward the unknown depth of Svara's intention. She moved closer still, her hands gliding along his torso in precise arcs, pressing lightly against his sides. Each motion was a study in contrast, firm enough to provoke reaction, gentle enough to avoid outright discomfort, creating a tension that was both exhilarating and unnerving. "You are learning control," she noted. "And yet control does not negate instinct. You see, Lieutenant, your body speaks in ways your mind cannot always anticipate. That is why you are both vulnerable and extraordinary." Adrian exhaled sharply, feeling heat pooling low in his abdomen, awareness spreading to every extremity. His body was alive with sensation, nerves firing in a complex, unpredictable rhythm. And Svara was reading it all, analyzing, understanding, appreciating the human capability for adaptation, endurance, and resilience. The subtle brush of her fingers along his lower abdomen was deliberate, almost hypnotic. Adrian's mind oscillated between restraint and surrender, between observation and reaction, between fear and fascination. It was unlike anything he had encountered. Combat was predictable, challenges measurable. But this was an entirely new kind of battlefield, one that existed in the space between instinct and consciousness. "You are at a threshold," Svara whispered, her voice soft and low, almost vibrating through him. "Not just physically, but mentally. The capacity to endure, to adapt, to respond, is what defines your species. And what you are learning here will define you further." Adrian's body betrayed him once again, a subtle shiver, a micro-flinch, a shift in breath he could not fully control. Svara's gaze locked on him, capturing it all, acknowledging it, almost reverently. "And yet," she continued, voice like a song threading through the sterile hum of the station, "there is more to learn. Limits to test, instincts to calibrate, and responses to refine. This is but the beginning of your exploration." Her hands retreated slowly, deliberately, allowing a moment of pause. Adrian lay there, chest heaving, aware of the tension still coiled in his muscles, the lingering heat between his legs, the residual shock of every subtle, intimate touch. "You have done well," she said softly, finally stepping back. "You are resilient. Your species is remarkable, and I am intrigued to see how far you can go." Adrian exhaled slowly, feeling a mixture of relief, lingering tension, and anticipation. He understood instinctively that MedStation Delta was a place of more than medical assessment. It was a laboratory for observation, a chamber for exploration, and a stage for understanding the human body and mind in ways no other species could. As he sat up slowly, Svara moved to the scanning console, activating a subtle array of holographic displays. "The next phase," she said, "will require cooperation, awareness, and further trust. Are you ready to proceed, Lieutenant?" Adrian nodded, his body still humming with residual awareness, his mind acutely focused. "Yes," he said firmly. "I am ready." Svara's iridescent eyes flickered with something unreadable, a rare human-like mirroring of anticipation or approval. "Good," she said softly. "Then let us continue. Your human resilience is extraordinary, and the journey is only beginning." As the scanners and holographic panels activated around him, Adrian felt both excitement and apprehension. He understood, in a way he could not have before, that his humanity, the very unpredictability, endurance, and instinctual adaptability, was being tested, studied, and refined. And that this process, guided by Svara, would push him to boundaries he had never imagined, setting the stage for challenges, discoveries, and intimate revelations that lay just ahead. He closed his eyes briefly, centering himself, preparing for the next phase of what would become a profound, transformative encounter between human instinct and alien understanding, a calibration of body, mind, and trust that would define not only his survival, but the potential of humans in the greater galaxy. The chamber's lights dimmed subtly as the MedStation's sensors hummed, casting shifting prismatic reflections across the walls. Adrian lay on the examination table, fully aware of Svar's presence nearby. There was no overt movement at first, only a quiet stillness, a shared anticipation, as though the air itself was charged with expectation. He could feel the residual warmth of her touch from earlier, an echo of pressure and awareness that lingered on his skin like an afterimage. Svar's eyes glimmered, those ever-shifting colors reflecting curiosity and a rare trace of emotion. "You have adjusted well," she murmured. "Your body's micro-responses are more controlled than I anticipated. Yet there is still potential to uncover. You have not reached the outer threshold." Adrian exhaled slowly, still processing the subtle shiver that had coursed through him moments before. I am ready to continue," he said firmly. "I trust your guidance." Her lips curved into a faint smile, a motion so slight that it could almost be mistaken for a shadow across her features. "Trust," she said softly, almost reverently, "is the foundation of exploration. Without it, comprehension is impossible. Your species has the capacity to trust despite uncertainty, a rare trait. That is why you are important." Adrian felt a mix of pride and apprehension. Important. That word carried weight, far beyond the clinical assessment she had initiated. It implied expectation, responsibility, and an unspoken challenge, that he, as a human, was capable of something unique that other species could not comprehend. Svara moved with deliberate grace, approaching the table. Her hands hovered briefly above him before descending, brushing lightly along his chest and sides. The pressure was measured, each stroke designed to provoke subtle micro-reactions. Adrian's body responded instinctively, a slight shiver, a tensing of his abdominal muscles, a subtle rise in his heartbeat that he could feel echoing in his ears. "You sense everything," she observed, voice a soft hum. "Every movement, every vibration, every shift in pressure. And yet, you maintain equilibrium. That is remarkable." Adrian swallowed hard. The intimacy of her observation, paired with the clinical precision of her touch, created a tension he could barely contain. "It's instinct," he said, though his voice trembled slightly. "I can't fully control it, but I can try to respond appropriately." Svar's eyes flickered with subtle approval. "Instinct is a language," she said. "It is the foundation of all interaction, the first and last comprehension. And your species speaks it fluently, even when untrained. That is why you are being calibrated." Her hands drifted lower, tracing deliberate arcs along his torso, brushing close to the boundary of vulnerability without overtly crossing it. Adrian's body reacted before his mind could intervene. Micro-adjustments of muscle, a subtle arch of his back, a controlled yet involuntary shift that sent a current of tension through him. "You are at the threshold again," Svara said softly. "Notice it. Understand it. Do not fight the instinct, but do not surrender entirely. Equilibrium is the goal, the balance between control and instinct." Adrian's pulse raced, awareness expanding. He realized that this was more than a medical assessment or a study of human physiology. It was an exercise in the synchronization of body and mind, a test of resilience, and an exploration of the human ability to adapt under conditions designed to unsettle and provoke. "I feel it," he whispered, voice tight. "The tension. It's overwhelming, but I can sense the pattern." Svara's hand pressed lightly against his lower abdomen, tracing a slow, deliberate path that made his body respond in ways he could neither predict nor suppress. Yet he forced himself to maintain poise, grounding himself through breath and conscious thought, observing every micro-reaction while letting the sensations inform his awareness. "Good," she said softly. "You are learning the rhythm of your own physiology. Awareness, control, instinct, they are interlinked. Each informs the other. And you, Adrian, are capable of integrating them seamlessly." Adrian's breath hitched at the duality of her words, clinical praise entwined with the intimate, almost sensual awareness of his body's reactions. His skin tingled where her fingers had passed, and his core thrummed with anticipation, a visceral acknowledgement of her deliberate, precise touch. "You have potential beyond simple endurance," Svara continued. "The human body is adaptable, yes, but it is the mind that amplifies this capacity. Observation, comprehension, anticipation, these make you not merely resilient, but extraordinary." Her hands moved higher briefly, then slid lower again in calculated motions, testing his reactions, analyzing the micro-flinches and subtle shifts in tension. Adrian's body betrayed him in small, undeniable ways, muscles quivering, breaths catching, a subtle arching of his back. But he maintained conscious control, forcing each reaction to remain within the bounds of awareness and study. "You understand," she whispered, her voice almost a vibration through the small chamber, "that this is not discomfort, nor is it indulgence. It is exploration. And through exploration, comprehension emerges." Adrian nodded, struggling to steady his thoughts as Svar's hands traced along the sides of his torso once more. The rhythm of touch and reaction, awareness and instinct, created a tension that was both thrilling and terrifying. His mind raced to categorize, analyze, and understand, while his body responded in primal, instinctive ways he could only partially govern. "You are at the edge," Svar murmured, "where instinct meets control. Few humans reach this stage. Most falter, overwhelmed by sensation or uncertainty. But you," her gaze met his, iridescent and penetrating, "you are different. You integrate." Adrian exhaled slowly, feeling the lingering warmth of her touch and the tremor that ran through his body. I want to continue," he said, determination threading through his voice. "I want to see how far I can go." Svar's lips curved faintly, an alien approximation of a smile. "Very well," she said. "The next phase will require full engagement, body, mind, and instinct. Are you prepared to calibrate yourself entirely?" Adrian's mind whirled. Fully engage. Calibrate entirely. He understood that this was no longer merely a test. It was an exercise in trust, endurance, and the delicate balance of exposure and control. "I am ready," he said firmly. The chamber seemed to contract around them, a space suspended between expectation and reality. Svar's hands moved with deliberate intent, brushing along his torso, lower abdomen, and sides, eliciting reactions that were both involuntary and instructive. Adrian focused on each micro-sensation, each nerve firing, each subtle adjustment, letting awareness guide his responses without allowing panic or embarrassment to dominate. "You are remarkable," Svar whispered, voice threading through the hum of the med station. "Not merely for your resilience, but for your ability to integrate instinct with control. This is rare, extraordinary, and it is why your kind matters." Adrian's chest heaved as he absorbed the words, feeling the weight of her observation, the intimacy of her scrutiny, and the undeniable thrill of the experience. His body, mind, and instinct were aligned, coexisting in a delicate equilibrium that was both exhilarating and exhausting. "And yet," Svara continued softly, "there is more to explore. Thresholds yet untested, instincts yet uncalibrated, awareness yet untapped. You have done well, but the journey is far from over." Adrian nodded, sweat dampening his brow, pulse racing with the intensity of the experience. He understood, with a clarity that transcended language, that this was only a precursor to something greater, an exploration that would push human instinct, resilience, and understanding to the limits. Svara stepped back, hands resting lightly at her sides. "Rest now," she said softly, her voice a caress and a command. "Reflect. Integrate. When the next phase begins, you will be ready." Adrian exhaled, body still humming with residual awareness, mind racing with anticipation and understanding. He realized, with a profound sense of awe, that his humanity, the combination of instinct, resilience, and conscious adaptation, was being examined and appreciated in ways he had never imagined, and that the true challenge, the full revelation of his potential, lay just ahead. As he closed his eyes, the chamber's soft hum and the prismatic glow of the lights around him, Adrian felt a deep connection, not merely to Svara, but to the concept of human capability itself. He understood instinct, awareness, and endurance in a way that transcended his previous experience. And he knew, without doubt, that the next phase would reveal even greater truths, testing him physically, mentally, and emotionally in ways that would define the boundaries of human potential. The med station was no longer just a medical facility. It was a crucible, a proving ground. And Adrian, human, resilient, instinctive, was at its center, poised to embrace the next stage of exploration, where the limits of trust, endurance, and comprehension would be tested, and perhaps exceeded. The chamber was quiet, almost unnaturally so. Adrian lay on the med station's table, every muscle and nerve heightened, his mind alert yet aware of the exhaustion from the previous phases. The lights above shifted subtly, casting prismatic reflections that flickered across Svara's features, giving her an ethereal presence, part alien, part guide, part enigma. The air felt electric, as if every molecule anticipated the culmination of the process that had begun days ago. Svara approached with her characteristic grace, her eyes, the kaleidoscopic mirrors of her species, focusing intently on him. This is the final calibration, she said, her voice both melodic and clinical. Everything you have experienced until now has been preparation. Body, mind, instinct, they must integrate completely. Only then can the final threshold be reached. Adrian exhaled slowly, steadying himself. He had crossed many thresholds before. Initial hesitation, the intimate pressures of touch, the nuanced balance between instinct and control. But he could feel that this phase would test not only his resilience but the very essence of his humanity. He nodded. I am ready, he said. Svara's hands moved closer, almost hovering, and then, with deliberate precision, she allowed them to make contact. Her touch was a study in subtlety, brushing against the skin, tracing along the ribs, the sides, and the lower abdomen. Adrian's body reacted immediately, micro-shivers, quickened breaths, but his mind clamped down, observing each response, noting the sensations without losing control. You have maintained remarkable equilibrium, she observed. Few humans can integrate instinct and awareness so seamlessly. Yet, the final threshold requires more than control. It demands surrender to understanding, recognition of your own potential and limitations simultaneously. Her words were a paradox, stirring a profound duality within him. He was to surrender, yet maintain control. To yield, yet command his own reactions. And in this, he sensed the truth. This was no mere physiological test. This was an exercise in human adaptability, resilience, and most importantly, trust. Trust not only in her, but in himself. Adrian's heart raced, his breath steadying into a rhythm he could control. He felt the warmth of her hands along his sides, her fingers tracing subtle patterns that elicited instinctive reactions, an involuntary arch, a twitch of muscles, the deepening awareness of his own physicality. And yet, he observed, learned, and adapted. Svara's eyes seemed to shift in color, reflecting subtle patterns across her irises. Observe the connection, she said softly, between perception and response, between stimulus and control. Each human possesses this, but few understand it fully. You, Adrian, are exceptional because you are conscious of it. The intensity increased. Svara's hands moved lower, grazing along the boundary of instinctive vulnerability, testing the limits of both composure and awareness. Adrian felt the sensation spike, his body responding before his mind could intervene. But he caught each reflex, analyzed it, and adjusted. He realized that the process was not about resisting sensation, but integrating it, allowing the body's instinct to inform awareness without overwhelming it. This, Svara murmured, is where your species excels. Adaptability, observation, integration. You have shown that instinct is not merely reaction. It can be guided, honed, and understood. That is the pinnacle of human potential. Adrian's chest heaved, awareness fully expanded. He understood now that each touch, each micropressure, each subtle shift in sensation was designed to reveal more than just physiological endurance. It was meant to expose the mind's capacity to comprehend, anticipate, and harmonize with the body. The alien methodology was elegant in its precision, a dance of science and intuition, physiology and psychology, observation and instinct. I understand, Adrian whispered. It's not just about sensation. It's comprehension, integration, control through awareness, not denial. Svara's lips curved faintly in acknowledgement. Exactly. You have grasped the essence of the final threshold. Now we move beyond mere observation. You will act. Adrian blinked, suddenly alert. Act? Yes, she said. The final calibration requires engagement, not passive response, but active integration. Your body and mind will be challenged simultaneously. This is the test of true human potential, where instinct and awareness converge. The chamber shifted subtly. Lights refracted into sharper patterns, sensors adjusting to monitor every micro-movement. Svara guided Adrian into a seated position, her hands steadying him, maintaining connection, ensuring that every shift was precise. She leaned close, her voice a near whisper. Trust yourself. Trust your body. Trust your mind. You are ready. Adrian's pulse thrummed in response, a rapid rhythm synchronized with the faint hum of the med station. He felt every fiber of his being alert, alive, and hyper-aware. Svara's hands moved deliberately, pressing gently along his torso, encouraging full engagement. Adrian allowed the sensations to flow through him, observing without resistance, integrating each subtle touch into a conscious understanding of his own responses. You are beyond the preliminary thresholds, Svara said. Now you must embrace the final stage, complete integration. Recognize the alignment of instinct, mind, and body. Synchronize them fully. Adrian closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He felt the residual warmth of her hands, the subtle pressure along nerve pathways, the involuntary shifts of muscle and core tension. But this time, he did not merely react, he harmonized. Each twitch, each shiver, each intake of breath became part of a deliberate rhythm, a pattern of awareness and control. He was both observer and participant, scientist and subject, human and something more. Svara's hands moved with precision, adjusting, guiding, encouraging. Yes, she murmured. Integration is complete. You have achieved a level few of your kind reach. Body, mind, and instinct aligned. Awareness, control, and comprehension synchronized. A wave of exhilaration swept through Adrian. He felt his body respond fully, instinctively, yet under conscious control. The tension that had haunted him through previous phases transformed into clarity, a profound understanding of his own capacities, a recognition of the delicate balance between vulnerability and resilience. You are extraordinary, Svara whispered. Not because of your physiology, but because of your species' potential to adapt, to comprehend, to harmonize instinct and consciousness. This is why humans are valued. This is why you matter. Adrian's chest rose and fell rapidly, a mix of exhaustion and triumph. I understand, he said. Not just the process, but my own capacity. The potential to endure, to integrate, to adapt. I see it. Svara's gaze softened, shifting through hues of acknowledgement and pride. And you are not alone in this understanding. Your species, though untested in many ways, possesses this innate adaptability. You are the proof, Adrian. The proof that humanity can rise, integrate, and excel where others falter. The med station's lights shifted again, signaling the completion of the calibration. Svara stepped back, allowing Adrian to rest fully. He closed his eyes, letting the residual hum of the chamber wash over him, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment, connection, and comprehension. In that quiet, suspended moment, Adrian realized that this experience was not merely about the body or instinct. It was about trust, integration, and the recognition of human potential in its truest form. He had been tested, observed, and guided, and through it all he had achieved something remarkable, the alignment of body, mind, and instinct. Svara's voice broke the silence, gentle yet resonant. Rest now, Adrian. You have completed the final calibration. Remember this understanding. It is not the end, but the beginning of a new comprehension of your potential, your species' potential, and the possibilities that await when instinct and awareness coexist. Adrian exhaled deeply, exhaustion and exhilaration mingling in equal measure. He felt the lingering warmth of her presence, the subtle imprint of guidance, and a profound sense of connection, not merely to Svara, but to the broader understanding of human capability. In that moment, he understood something fundamental. Humanity's strength was not merely in endurance or intellect, but in the capacity to harmonize instinct, awareness, and conscious action. The human body and mind were instruments of adaptation, resilience, and comprehension, and when guided, observed, and trusted, they could reach heights unimagined by other species. Svara's hands rested lightly on his shoulders, a final acknowledgement of completion. You have succeeded, Adrian. Not as a subject, not merely as a human, but as a being capable of understanding and integrating. This is why your species is remarkable. Adrian's chest heaved, a slow smile forming on his lips despite the exhaustion. I see it now, he whispered. I see what humans can do. I see what I can do. Svara inclined her head, her iridescent eyes reflecting a spectrum of approval and quiet wonder. And now, the understanding passes forward. You are no longer merely observed. You are a participant in the continuum of comprehension. Your species will advance because of this. You will advance because of this. The chamber hummed softly, a final echo of the med station's sensors. Adrian lay back, fully aware, fully engaged, and fully transformed. He had crossed thresholds, faced instinct and awareness, and emerged not only unbroken but enlightened. The experience had been intimate, challenging, and transformative, a testament to the resilience and potential of humanity itself. As Svara stepped back into the shimmering lights, Adrian felt a profound sense of completion. The journey, though intensely personal, was part of a greater continuum. Humanity's strength lay not just in survival, but in adaptation, integration, and comprehension. And in that realization, Adrian knew one immutable truth. The human species, with its capacity for instinct, awareness, and trust, was destined to transcend boundaries, not merely of space, but of understanding itself. The med station powered down, the hum fading into silence. Adrian exhaled one final time, a deep, steady breath that carried the weight of discovery and the promise of what lay ahead. He had been tested, observed, and transformed. And now he was ready, for anything, for everything, and for the vast, uncharted potential that awaited humanity in the galaxy beyond.